Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Ranching 101. We are so glad you have joined us today. And before we get started, I wanted to remind you all of a few things. September 20th from 1 to 2 p.m. will be our September Ranching 101. And we're going to talk about incorporating wildlife into your beef cattle operation. And Dr. Jeff Goodwin will be joining us for that. This is also a reminder that our policy conference registration is open and the price does increase tomorrow. So if you're interested in joining us September 12th through the 14th in San Antonio, be sure to get online at tscra.org and get registered today. And we would like to thank our friends at Lone Star Ag Credit for supporting Ranching 101. And so at this time, I'm going to play a brief video from them.
My name's Tony Ballinger, and me and my family own and operate Crossbeat Cattle Company. We'd be considered a first-generation ranching operation. You know, we kind of started from scratch and kind of built up over the years. Just me and my son, Carson. You know, the guys there at Lone Star, they do a good job of building a good relationship. It's more like dealing with a partner than it is a bank. And I think that's really important in the ag business.
Once again, thanks to Lone Star Ag Credit, we couldn't do all we do without their support, and so we appreciate it. We just want to remind you all that throughout this is a moderated discussion, so please send in your questions. You're welcome to send them in through the Q&A box or the chat box below, and I will be reading them as we go. And so we're going to start by just introducing our guests today, and they're going to tell us a little bit about what they do. So Andy, if you'd like to go first.
All right. Hey, guys, I'm Andy Baumeister, live in Goldthwaite, Texas. We've got the sale barn here in Lampasas. Owned it about 3.5 years. It was in January of 19 when we bought it. I also go out to San Angelo at Producers and help Charlie out there when they have bigger runs, which that's been for the last 1.5 years probably. So I've been going out there. So I sell 2 sales a week, go to some auctioneer contests. Also run about 100 cows myself. And as well, we buy a lot of light calves and precondition them, put loads together. So we're in the auction business and the cattle business and preconditioning cattle as well.
Thank you. Charlie?
And those are some fine credentials, Andy. He's younger and prettier. That's why we got his picture on here instead of mine. I will tell y'all, my name's Charlie Christensen. I manage Producers Livestock in San Angelo. I've been managing it here for the Cargill family for 35 years or so. And we ranch as well in the San Angelo area. And, we kind of do some of everything, but we sell sheep and goats on Tuesdays and Wednesdays if we need to, and cattle on Thursdays. And, we've been here, the Cargill family's owned this auction since 1954, so I guess there's a fair bit of experience around here. We're open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days out of the year to receive cattle, sheep, goats, and all that. So if I can help answer some questions, I'm happy to do it.
Well, thank you both for joining us. We really appreciate it. We're just going to get started with some questions and wait for some to come in. So as we get started, we know the drought is happening everywhere. We were talking about that before we get on. So talk about people bringing their cattle to the auction when they're weaned, dehorned, vaccinated, and castrated. What is the value of those cattle compared to those that are not doctored?
Andy, you want that one or you want me to take it?
Well, sorry, I had a call come in. That'll work. Around here, we don't see just a lot of cattle that are worked and vaccinated, but when we do, you definitely receive a premium. It really depends on the size of calf, what you're going to receive as a premium, but anything you can do to advance your calf, something that we can talk about, something that's going to help the health of that calf is definitely going to help you. I'm just a very firm believer that it all starts with your bulls. You can have kind of a plainer cow, but go ahead and buy you a good bull. That's going to help you just as much as anything. And then your vaccinations. I know a lot of guys, you don't have very many. and it can be a pain in the butt. But I feel like you're going to get paid back for it 9 times out of 10. Yeah, there's going to be that one time where it's probably not going to, it might not pay you as much and you think you wasted your time, but I feel like it's not going to hurt you and definitely gives you an option to make more money. Charlie, do you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Andy. And, here in San Angelo, where you really get paid premiums for wing calves is generally in the late summer and fall of the year, more so than in the cold of the winter and all that. Once these calves have gone through a sweat on the cows and kind of gotten into wintertime, if they wean them in January or February, typically the buyers don't pay as much attention to the weaning information that we give them at that time of the year, because you just don't have as many health problems at that time of the year when the calf is weaned. But for the, my stance has always been for the health of the industry itself. I think the more you can do and do properly with your vaccines, I think the better it's going to be for you and the industry as a whole. These smaller groups of calves, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 calves. It's hard to tell a man that his calves are going to bring a premium because they've been vaccinated. It's more important that if at that point, like Andy was saying, that they have quality to them, that there's some obvious quality. We're seeing the biggest spread that I think I've seen in a long, long time between the plainer type calves, longhorn crosses, and real Bremer crosses, and some of that stuff with a lot of ear on it. We're seeing the biggest spread right now that I've seen in a long time between them and the quality calves. And that goes for a light calf or a heavy calf.
Thank you. It looks like we're having some technical difficulties with the chat, but I think I got it fixed. So if you want to.
Way to go, Charlie.
Okay, so one of the questions we just got in is, I don't see the premiums for my healthy calves compared to others. One all grouped together, the price is controlled by the lower performers. Your comments?
I'm not sure I understand the question. The price is controlled by the lower performers. I guess I need some clarification. I will say that if they're, it's like I just said, the higher quality calves are going to bring more before the weaning information becomes effective. But at this point in time, I would say, just make sure you have some quality to them, and I think you should get paid for your weaning work. And a lot of that depends on how many there are in a group. If there's just 1 or 2, you're probably not going to get a premium over calves that aren't weaned in that situation.
And I would like to touch something on that as well. Everybody thinks their calf is the best one there is. And I highly suggest, and I announce it every week, I would love to come and look at folks' cattle. Sometimes that big, pretty spotted cow that's fat and gentle that everybody loves, she's going to have a little spotted calf or something like that that's not going to sell near as good. And one other thing, everybody thinks they want their calves real fat and shiny and pretty. That's not what sells the best at the auction.
That's a good point. We had a question, how much of a difference is it going to make if they've castrated, vaccinated, and dewormed their cattle? I don't know that if you could put a dollar amount on it, but generally speaking, what are you looking at?
I'd say right now the biggest spot is in the 475 to 600 pound bull calves coming straight off their mama. That's the spot where I see it the most. Fat bull calf weighing, like I say, 475 to, let's just say, 575. They're liable to bring 135 to 155, say, right now, to where a good steer is going to bring from 150 to 175. So right there in that range, I think you could see 15 to 20 cents. Right now, we've got a lot of play on the bigger cutting bulls, the 6, 7, 8 weight cattle. I'm going to say still in that range, you're probably looking at a 10 cent premium on your steer calf. You get into the little calves, under 450 pounds, not as much. You're not seeing it as much there because those cattle are still pretty little. But definitely, I feel like the biggest hit right now is that 475 to 575 fat bull calf, fresh off of his mama. He's at least 20 cents back of a steer for sure.
One of the questions we got, which kind of ties into some of the questions we've talked about, was what does sell best? So maybe touch on, age and weight, and you kind of just touched on 475 to 575. You're seeing, differences there, but what maybe is the best time to market your cattle and bring them to the sale barn?
Well, I'll throw in on this one. I've always said the time to sell them is when they're ready. If everybody's operation's different, they're farm or ranch, and they've got, whether it be pens, pastures, types of feed, farm versus a no farm, you can just make, there's many differences between operations and what somebody can do. But when a set of calves is ready, based on your operation, that's when it's time to come to town. Don't try to second guess the market and just come whenever you think the market is good, because in the meantime, you may have made your cow get thin because your calf sucking on it too long. You may, it's really when they're ready, and try to have some uniformity in your calves. If you want to make them bring the most, just try to have uniformity. It doesn't matter if you're selling them weighing 4.5 or 8.5, try to have some uniformity in them.
That kind of ties into another question we've gotten, which is, what is the minimum amount of calves to run together? And the gentleman who asked us said 10, 20. What would you advise?
As in selling is in a group?
That's how I assume they meant it, yes.
When we get cattle in, which Charlie, he gets a lot more bigger groups in, but I try and sell deals as much as we can, and I'll sell 2 at a time. But they've got to match is the biggest thing. They've got to have some similarities. You can't sell a 550 pounder and a 650 pounder together. They've got to match. They don't necessarily have to match in color, but they need, you could sell a black baldy and a red baldy together probably, but the main thing is they need to match each other.
So for both of you, you could probably touch on this. What is the normal order of sale on auction day?
Well, I can tell you in San Angelo, we try to start with some cows and bulls, things that are just going to go directly to the packer that we feel certain are going to go to the packing house, or one of the packers. As far as after that, then we just get into order of arrival, and we'll sell calves and cows, some of everything. And then at some point in the late morning, we have a sheet that we put together that's a cattle that have been vaccinated. Some of them that we have vaccination information on. Some of them have been weaned. But anything that we've got specific information like that on, then we have a list of those that we'll sell basically in the order that they arrived at the auction. And then we move on into the balance of the calves. And then as we get later in the day, we'll go back and start picking up bred cows and pairs, and there'll be more calves mixed in with those as well. So we're selling, we've kind of got a mix all day, but we do have a method to our madness.
Here at Lampasas, we sell the packer bulls first, and then we sell the packer cows. Then we'll sell the pairs, then the bred cows. Sometimes we take just a short break, and then we'll start selling the calves. We normally sell the first pen of what we call jackpot calves. It's where, everybody that brings in 1 or 2, they can't have their own pen here. So we pin those all together, and those are called the jackpot calves. So we'll start on the jackpot calves, and then we'll get in and sell some of our deal cattle. The guys that have brought in some that we can make packages out of, we'll sell those next, and then we'll finish up with the more jackpot calves.
So moving into the fall, how do you foresee cattle prices this fall?
It's a good question. I mean, it's been getting better. Normal year, I will tell you about 1 year out of 10, you see calf prices and packer cow prices get better in the fall. And it's literally about 1 year out of 10. This is probably one of those years that we're going to see these calves push higher as we go into the fall, and we're going to see these cows push higher. It's mainly going to be because the feeders are going to turn around and the stocker operators are going to turn around if they got some feed and they're not going to have anything to buy, at least in this part of the country. And I know the northern states, their numbers are short as well in a lot of those places. So there's a pretty good scramble on packer cows and calves as we go into this fall.
So someone brought up some really good points about there are a lot of vaccination programs, VAC 25, VAC 30, 45, and 60. In your opinion, is there any that are better than others, or where could people go to get this information? Where are you sending people coming to the sale barn who have questions like this?
Charlie, you answer that one?
I sure don't mind. I mean, there's, when generally most of the folks that come in here have got their own idea of what program they want to do. But if they don't, it's not hard to steer them to their veterinarian, their local veterinarian. And it, depending on what part of the state you are, as to what type of vaccines you should give. A deep East Texas operation needs to give a different vaccine than a guy in Marfa, Texas. And so it varies quite a bit, but it's not hard to find those programs. If you know how to Google, you can find as many of them as you want. But I would definitely say that anybody that's got a program, at a minimum, you're going to need to vaccinate your calves for clostridial diseases. When you mark your calves, and it's a good time to also, assuming you do mark your calves, and it's a good time also to go ahead and give some kind of an IBR complex, like a Cattle Master or something like that. As long as there's a lot of talk back and forth whether it should be killed vaccine that when the baby calves are modified live. Our operation, we still stay with a triangle, which is a killed vaccine. But in parts of the state out here and down toward Del Rio, a lot of folks giving anthrax to their calves. I mean, you just have different problems in different places, but at a minimum, you need to hit them for clostridial diseases, I think. And then beyond that, if you're doing a weaning program, you definitely need to get 2 rounds of some kind of modified live IBR complex vaccination into them.
Do you want to add anything to that, Andy?
I think a vet for sure, like Charlie said, and I agree with Charlie. I mean, different areas are going to need different vaccines. As far as you get into the VAC 25, 35, 45, I don't have any input on that. I haven't been around it enough. I'll just be honest with you. But I know when a guy's got a semi-load of cattle and he can advertise that they're on the VAC 45 program or any kind of program, it's definitely going to help you. And as good as the internet is now, even like with what we're doing today, I think little Google search, a guy can learn a lot. You can hook up with a drug rep in your area. That would help, or your local veterinarian.
Tyler, one thing I would like to say is a lot of these folks, they bring their cattle in and they tell us they've been weaned for, a week or 3 days or 20 days, or, and honestly that first 30 days is really just getting the ball out of them and getting them started. And if you're going to get the full the full benefit economically of weaning your calves, you need to wean them a minimum of 30 days. And, 45 and 60 days is even better for most of these from the buyer standpoint. If they look at a set of calves, somebody walks in and says they've been weaned a week, a lot of them just kind of laugh and say that's just long enough to start getting sick, especially if they haven't given them any vaccines. So, that's pretty important that if they're going to actually wean them, take them off the calf, that they feed them well, keep them gaining weight, and do it for enough time to make it really add some value to the cattle.
I agree 100% on that.
That's a good point. We had a couple questions come in about, is it better to wean your cattle or not? And talking about, with the drought right now, are you seeing more people sending pairs because they don't want to keep cattle on their property, or are you seeing still just the same amount of weaned cattle? And that'll kind of tie into this question about talking about percentages. How much has your sale gone up because of the drought? How many more cattle are you running than you typically would this time of year?
Here at Lampasas, we're seeing lots of full families, pairs. And what's sad is there's not a lot of pairs going back to the country. So we're splitting a lot of those. We don't see just a whole lot of weaned cattle right here to begin with, but we definitely aren't seeing any right now. Everything that's coming in is probably at least 100 pounds lighter, maybe 200 pounds lighter than where they would normally sell them. And then also, the little light calves coming in on the cows. As for our numbers here, we've been 2 to 3 times bigger since the middle of April. We've had a couple weeks where it was bigger than that, but we've just stayed steadily 2 to 3 times bigger since the middle of April, and it hasn't slowed down yet. And it doesn't look like it's going to tomorrow either, because it's been steady all morning.
Here in San Angelo, I think we've been selling people out of one part of the country or another for the last 2 years. Particularly we started with the Davis Mountains, selling those people out. There's, our auction's a little different than the nearest auction is about 60, 70 miles away from us. They're, and some of them even further than that. Most of them even further than that. So we have a pretty big trade area as far as far West Texas. So we've been selling a lot of cattle out of far West Texas for the last couple of years. And so our numbers really haven't changed that much. We've just steadily stayed busy every week. And, but it's, and I'll say the same thing Andy was saying, as far as pairs are concerned, we're getting the pairs. Unless they just little bitty baby calves on young cows that are pretty fancy, there's not many of those pairs going back to the country. Most of the cows that we're seeing, we still hadn't gotten deep into the youngest cows yet, I don't think. If a guy's got 100 cows, he might have cut in half already, and he might have cut 75% of his herd already, but he still hadn't sent his 2, 3, and 4-year-old cows in. We're just not seeing that many of those. We're seeing a handful, but not a whole lot. But people trying to hang on and see what fall brings. But I think if we don't get some rain in September, significant rainfall between here and kind of the middle of October, I think we're gonna see the numbers, the young cows really start to come to town. Then is my opinion.
And that would be about the same as here as well. I've talked to several guys that have already cut back by 40%, but that's all their older cows. We're not seeing as many younger cows yet, but I have had several say kind of Labor Day is kind of the mark. If we don't get anything by Labor Day, they're going to reduce by at least 40% again. And that's going to start getting into some of the younger cows.
Another question we got asked was, how much does breed character and color pattern affect prices?
A bunch.
Yeah, a lot.
Yeah, a bunch. I mean, really, unfortunately, I've been upset about color pattern affecting for years, but there's nothing we can do about it. I think breed is the most important thing. If if you stick with good breeds of good quality within those breeds, every breed that's out there, most breeds that are out there, I would say 9 out of 10 have a place. And some of it has to do with even those Longhorn crosses, people using them down there in that rough country and kind of Southwest Texas, down in the rocks where they can't see the cattle very often. But it's, they don't put much money into them, so they don't expect much out of them. You don't want to raise a Longhorn in good country where you can raise something better if you're trying to, a more quality beef animal, as per what the buyers want. If you can raise those in your country, which most of us can. So breed and quality within that breed are very important. As everybody knows, these black cattle have sold really well, especially if they've got some quality to them for several years now, since the Certified Angus Beef programs got going. I mean, they sparked everybody. And so we've seen a lot of people run that direction, but we're seeing, the Red Angus coming along. Hereford crosses are, still right in there because it's a good English breed. A lot of people using a good Charolais bull on a, crossbred cow, still selling an awful good calf, because you've got to always compare, you selling more weight or less weight. I mean, we get paid by the pound. So keep that in mind as you try to do something, but definitely there's a whole lot of variability there. So try to stay with the best cattle you can get. And that, like Andy said earlier, that starts with, don't just go buy the sorriest bull you can find, go buy the best bull you can afford, and it'll generally pay for itself.
Yes, I'd like to add just a little bit, along with what Charlie was saying, definitely quality, the Angus. What we run into a little bit around here, being closer to Austin, and everybody's getting their small ranchettes, and there are, I'm going to throw a term out there, internet traders, and there's fads that you'll let somebody lead you astray onto something that they say is the next big thing. I'm a big fan of keeping it to the basics and stay with what works. And if you're not 100% sure, get with somebody who does. I know several sale barn owners, several people that market cattle that would be more than willing to come and talk to you and help you with your program. But don't get caught up in a fad and let somebody get you for a lot of money. That's something we run into a lot here. I'm going to throw out there Wagyu. There is definitely a place for a Wagyu. But 2 or 3 head, just bring it to your local sale barn, you're not going to receive that premium that breeder or man that was selling them to you, you're not going to see what he's telling you. You might, I'm not saying not to do it, but have him give you a spot where you can sell them and get that premium and not just send them to your local auction. Same thing with a mini Hereford. There's lots of people that love those cute little things, but then they bring them to the sale. And well, I was told this little bull calf was going to bring $3,000. That's more internet trade. I guess we're used to the basics. Our cattle, what we do here, what all your sale barns in Texas, these guys, they're building loads that will eventually go north to feedlots. So those cattle need to be the same, whether it be Angus, Red Angus, Charolais, that kind of cattle, to where they're not going to be able to sprinkle in a mini Hereford with an Angus. So there's not as many spots to go with those type of cattle. So stick with the basics.
Someone asked, when talking about weaned calves, whether 45 or 60 days, how's the best way to, market them to a specific sale barn to help them get the premium for weaning those cattle? And then kind of the next question was from someone else tuning in, when is the right time to sell your weaned cattle? Do you think 45 days is better or 60 days?
For us, I'm shooting for 60 days, and kind of from us starting our preconditioning deal, we keep 400 of those things around. And until they've got 60 days under them, they're still pretty tender. So I've talked to a lot of the buyers that they won't even consider a calf weaned until it is at least 60 days. The first year of me having the barn, I tried some cattle and we got them 30 to 45 days weaned, and it wasn't enough. And you could tell it in the condition of the cattle. So you sure enough need to get 60 days under them if you're going to take the time to wean them. If you're going to take the time, you need to get paid for it. But I'm also a believer you really need to have a set to where you might have 5 calves and they're all 5 different sizes. It's not going to pay you as much to do that. You would be better off to strip those calves off the cow the day of the sale and take them in there. You really, if you're going to take the time to wean them and go through all the labor and extra cost, you need to have a marketable product where it goes back to your bull having a calving period and to where you have a set. And several sales just out there at Producers is one of them. They have calf specials, wean specials. Take your calf to a special sale to where you do get your premium.
One thing I'd like to add to that is if you're going to wean calves, it's almost always been the case that you absolutely have to make them keep gaining weight from the day you take them off the cows. You don't want to get them greasy fat, but you definitely want to keep them gaining weight. They should be gaining from 3/4 to a pound a day, every day, if you want to get your money out of it. That way, if you don't get a premium for your calves, you've added weight to your calves, and you should get your expense and vaccinations back. Now, the tough part about that in today's world is if you don't have something on the ground on your place, whether it be a wheat field or a clover or something like that, we're an awful strong country with a lot of grass on it. You're not going to be able to make them gain very economically, just because the cost of feed right now is so high, any kind of supplemental feed. So, keep that in mind though. And if the calves are fat and you're not going to get them any fatter, just sell the dang things. You'll save yourself a lot of heartache, especially if, like Andy said, it's a smaller group. It makes more sense when you have a larger group, and that's really, I would probably put it at about 20 steers or 20 heifers that are uniform and can sell as a group when they go through the sale ring. That's kind of a minimum size group that I would recommend to people to try to wean and sell. Now, heifers may be a little different deal when there's a market for replacement quality heifers. You can target, a special cow sale or something with some weaned heifers that have been fully vaccinated and maybe calf foot vaccinated as well. But right now, we're not in those times in Texas until we get out of this drought, and people are turning around trying to buy replacements. That market's probably not very good right now at any auction barn in Texas.
So you both brought up specialty sales. So touch on what a specialty sale is, kind of what that entails, how the marketing for that would look a little different than your average Thursday cattle sale at the sale barn.
A special sale, we try and get groups of weaned cattle, bigger groups of calves that will deal up to where you can get a few more buyers, maybe some more outside interest to buy weaned cattle or bigger groups. Most every barn around, will have some sort of special sale. I know Charlie and them out there, they'll seem to have one every 6 weeks, 2 months, something like that. Here, we'll try and do 2 or 3, 4 a year. With the way things have been set up this year, it's been so crazy. We haven't set any specials, but a special is to where you get more groups of cattle together to where you can call and get some outside buyers. At our regular sale, that handful of weaned calves, they're not really going to go on any other orders other that they're going to mix them right on the unweaned calves. Same thing with a special cow sale. You're getting bigger groups of cows of similar kind put together to put in front of a group of people on a Saturday or a Thursday afternoon, to where they can sit in there and buy a whole pasture full instead of coming to a regular sale to where we might not have but 5 or 10 quality cows to take home that day.
I defer to Andy. That was good. That's correct here as well as it is where he is.
We have gotten some questions about bison. Are you seeing bison run at your sale yard or sale barns? And is that becoming a more popular trend?
I'll answer this one. We don't allow bison. When somebody pulls up with a bison, we send them to Lampasas Auction Barn. So any of y'all that have bison, you can take them down there to Andy. No, we had some people try to sell some bison here over time, and we don't handle bison. We don't sell horses, mules, bison, or llamas anymore. We did sell a few for a while, and we stopped. They just don't fit our program here.
Thank you for that push, Charlie. I appreciate that.
You're welcome.
But we don't sell any bison here. For one, I don't know if my old pens would handle them. It takes so much. Those things are pretty destructive. I know of several people kind of around that do have some, but they're more of, they'll put them together and then send them to a feed yard where they feed nothing but bison. But I know the bison, they do have lots of friends and they're kind of growing, but they're just so hard on equipment. It's hard to find a spot around that sells them on a weekly basis. We looked into maybe trying to do some modifications around here and have a wild game sale or an exotic sale, call it. But we never have done it. It would take a lot.
Someone commented, is now a good or a bad time to sell a set of 14 Angus cross heifers exposed to a low birth weight regular Angus bull through a sale barn with spring calves?
Not many players on that type of stuff right now. Now, the market is very good on that class of heifer right now. A 7-weight heifer has got quite a few friends. I'm not sure. Maybe those cattle might be a little bigger. Hopefully they are. But those cattle are going to bring a lot just to go to the feed yard. And something we're running into, even with the take-home kind of cows, the market's so good right now. It's hard. People don't want to give more than just your packer or feeder market to take an animal home. Because like I say, the demand right now is very good. The market, there is nothing wrong with the packer market or the feeder calf market. By no means. I would say if there is a fault, it would be in the take-home cow, because it is so dry here and we're not seeing many people replenish because they're either out of water or they're out of grass, and then fuel's so high, it costs so much to freight them out of here.
Tyler, were those pairs, or were you talking about just some exposed heifers?
They were just some exposed heifers.
Okay, yeah. Well, I'll kind of reiterate what Andy said, and if a heifer is grown off well, let's say she weighs kind of a minimum of 875, 900 pounds, but preferably closer to 1,000. And if she is heavy bred, and I'm talking about 6 months or more, and there's enough of them in a group and they have enough quality to them, I think those kind of cattle can sell, fairly well in the right situation, a special cow sale or something like that. Like Andy said, these feeders are giving quite a bit for them right now. And some of them can dollar out pretty well. We had a set of cattle sold here a couple of weeks ago. There were some thinner type Brangus heifers that weighed, I believe, somewhere around 7.5. And those heifers brought back over $1,000 a piece. And the owner wanted us to pregnancy test some of them, and we pregnancy tested, and we stopped pregnancy testing because most of them were open. There was a couple of shortbred ones in there that were 2 or 3 months bred. Those heifers, if they'd been open, they could have sold with the rest of the heifers. That set of open heifers and the ones that we didn't test brought over $1,000. And the two that we pregnancy tested that were shortbred brought $850. So they cost themselves money by pregnancy testing or breeding those and bringing them to town as shortbred cattle. You're almost better off for them to be open. They either need to be open or they need to be sure enough heavy bred, fixing to have a calf and be grown off well. And that goes a lot of the time. I mean, there's got to be a real demand for replacements for shortbred cattle to bring a lot of money.
Talking about bringing your cattle to the sale barn, touch a little bit about, transportation, truck and trailer, when you're bringing your cattle, why should people use their cutting gates? What kind of flooring have you seen best work in trailers and things of that nature?
Those cut gates were definitely put there for a reason. Cattle, they're stressing in there. They don't know what's going on. They're going to pile up on each other. To where, say you've got 3 cuts in your trailer and they're all 8 foot, so you've got a 24-foot trailer. It's a lot better to at least get some cattle in the front. For that wind goes to blowing through there, well, then they're all going to pile up on the ones in the back. And I've seen it several times. I know Charlie has, especially with sheep and goats. I mean, there's going to be some dead ones on the back that they get piled up on. So definitely use your cut gates to save some lives. The other was clean. Did you say bleach?
Type of trailer flooring.
Oh, trailer floor cleats.
Things
Yes.
like that.
Yes. Definitely this new Lifetime rubber floor that they've got out with the cleats on it. Definitely a good product. Wood floors are fine. Just make sure you have something on that wood floor for them to get some grip. I run into a bad experience as a kid. I had some boards kind of going across for some cleats, but they were running the wrong way and got cattle down. So those cattle definitely have to be able to get some traction once, some manure and urine gets on those boards, they get slick. Well, then they go to losing their footing and then they go to piling up on each other. And that's even worse than the cut gates.
Yeah, I think I want to add to that is that in times like these, when a lot of these cattle don't have the condition that we'd like to see them in, and we get these thinner type cows, or even some of the yearlings that I've seen, it's against the law for a livestock market or a packing house to unload a down animal, and that's slipped. And it doesn't matter if it just slipped down in your trailer. If it can't get up, we can't take it off. And so I guess my point is we're talking about the cut gates. This is a little opposite to what some people think, but if you've got a few old thin cows that you're a little bit worried about their condition, and if they're going to make the trip, put them in the front of the trailer and close that front gate, and don't let anything else in there with them, because that liable to knock them down. And then put the rest of your cattle behind that. That way, when you get to the auction, the other cattle all get off the trailer without knocking those old thin cows down, or worse yet, they block your back gate. You can't get them off, but leave them up in the front. And then if everything's good when you get there, and those cows, even if they laid down in the trailer, if they'll stand up and walk off, we can take them. And we do everything we can to try to get them off the trailer and sell them for you. We want to get them through the ring. But just do your part getting them in there. Like I said, use good floors and separate them properly in that trailer. And I think you'll be a lot more successful.
We talk about the average age of people in the ag industry and even cattle raisers members And someone asked, are you seeing buyers beginning to age? And if so, are younger buyers in the pipeline to replace them?
I think we're all beginning to age, aren't we?
I know I feel a lot older than I did 3 years ago. I know that.
There you go. No, I think, yeah, I mean, I think we have younger buyers coming in all the time. I've worried about that. Being around for as long as I've been around, I remember 30-something years ago worrying about, a man was buying a lot. It was after being a sheep and goat sale, and he sure was buying a lot of them, and it was late in the day, and he was an old guy, and I thought, what's going to happen when this guy's gone? Is there going to be anybody there? Well, people that buy livestock for a living, they're going to go where they get the most opportunity to buy and buy what they want to buy. And if there's somebody that's in that market, it doesn't matter if there's a buyer in that market, it doesn't matter if he's 35, 25, or 75. If he's got the big stick and he's spending the most money on a certain class of livestock, the young guy's still got an opportunity, but he may need to buy a different class of livestock for a little while. But they definitely, when those old guys go by the wayside, there'll be somebody fill his seats. And in these auction markets, people have asked me for years, well, are the videos going to put you out of business or this or that? And the average herd size in the state of Texas, I think is somewhere around 20 head and maybe less now. But, if they can't deliver a load or at least a split load of steers and heifers, you're not going to sell anything on the video for what it's worth. So there's always going to be a place for an auction in Texas, and there's always going to be somebody sitting in that chair, unless weather, causes a problem with them getting there, or they're just, not enough livestock for them to show up. There's always going to be somebody sitting in those chairs, young or old.
I agree.
Well, we'll take a second and see if there's any last minute questions before we wrap up. But I want to thank you both for your time. This was very educational. If you are attending and watching live and you want to watch the recording, you're going to be emailed in about 48 hours with the link to rewatch it. And if you do have any other questions or things you need from cattle raisers, you can email us at education@tscra.org, and I'll include that email in the chat. If people would like to get in contact with you, Andy and Charlie, what is the best way they could reach out?
My cell phone would be the best. You can shoot me a text or call me 512-902-3540.
I'm the same. My cell phone's 325-234-4939. And I'm happy to answer questions anytime. And you can call me at Producers Livestock Auction here in San Angelo. Like I said, we're open all the time. And or you can send me an email. And I think all that's on our website. We've got a website. So you can look up Producers Livestock Auction San Angelo and find it. One thing I want to close on saying this is that everybody's got different resources on their outfit. And, people talk about weaning calves and vaccinating calves and what they should do, what they shouldn't do, what they should raise and what they shouldn't. Well, part of the reason we're all in this business is because we've got a different idea of how we want to do it. And we have different resources, and, just kind of embrace your resources and figure out what you've got and what you can do that'll make sense. And believe me, Andy and I, we've seen it all. So if you got any questions, feel free to call either one of us, but call your local livestock market. And, the further east you go, the more there are, and call them. And if you don't like the answer you get, call another one and see what his answer is. If you don't like the answer you get, call another one. But if you call about 3 or 4 of them, they all tell you the same thing, you're probably right, and about whether you're doing something right or wrong. But pick a market and give them a chance. And And if you don't like what they did, call them up and let them know. Call them up and be fair about it. And I know, I'm happy to hear questions, and I want to know as soon as somebody sold something with me, if there's something went wrong. I'd rather hear it straight from them than some guy at the coffee shop or something, because a lot of times I can fix the problem if that's the case.
That's exactly right. I'd like to hit on that as well. We get a few calls every once in a while. And I can't fix a problem if I don't know what the problem is. And I would love to fix all problems, or if it can't be fixed, I better sure have a good explanation for it. So, and I've known there's been a few instances here lately at some other barns where they just throw it out there on Facebook. Why don't you call the source first and try and solve the problem? Because I'm going to say 9 out of 10 barns, they're going to fix the problem and make it right, because that's what we're here for. We're here to get you the most money we can for your calf or cow. And if for some reason something happens and she doesn't, call us so we can tell you why.
Well, thank you both. And we will, if anyone does have questions or need anything else, feel free, like I said, to email us at education@tscra.org, and we will get you that information. And we are so glad you could join us, both of you, and thank you for your time.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Take care. Thank y'all.